All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Agenda discussion. Dr. Johnson, you got anything you want to kick off here with, or you just ready? You're open for questions here. You want to quickly go through each item?
I guess we can kind of quickly go through by section. If there's anything that we'll start at the section. If there's anything that the board has questions around or on, we'll address them as well as we can. I'll just jump down to the Future Rated 2023 report or update. We'll do a end of year kind of summation of the work that's happened in the system. We'll provide you just an update on all departments across the district and kind of some highlights and some next steps around district level work. You see the consent agenda there before you or in your packets that are online.
Hey, Big Daddy, can I back you up just a second?
Please. Big Daddy is what's that normally called. Let's roll with it. That's what we normally rolling right along. I'm answering to it, so it's roll.
Joe, hey, Joe, that's why I didn't wear shorts.
I was just going to ask, I see under recognitions,
Yes.
Kirk Jones. Why are we recognizing him? Go ahead. Why are we recognizing him?
Absolutely. So he saved a child from drowning.
Okay. I thought maybe it's because he's a new coach.
No.
Sure.
And I may miss some of the nuance of the story, and Brad will share it, but we just thought it was worth of recognition and just.
I was just afraid maybe you're going to recognize new coaches, and I didn't want to.
Absolutely. No.
Why is a request to recognize? Like, are we actually going to recognize that guy? Or are we requesting to recognize him?
I don't know why it says request, but it is a recognition. Yeah.
The reason is because it's people outside the school system who are actually recognizing this. And I went through all that.
Okay.
It's not actually a school system. It's not a school system presentation.
Okay.
It's not really anybody affiliated, but it's a special.
One of our students.
Yeah.
And it is one of our students.
And you want to context, well, it's in the memo, but you want to contextualize it, obviously, as young man.
This is the little boy whose father killed his mother last year when they were on their way to his birthday party. So some people in the community have gotten together and they want to give him, I don't know if it's been a year, but
It's been about.
recognition on his birthday. And they're going to do a shadow box and give him some the items where they that food and shadow box. Judge Shadow, and I can't remember the other person's name that's involved, but they're outside the system, but they just wanted to represent them. So that's why.
How old is he?
He was a second.
Second grader, second grader.
There might even be a surprise
Yeah.
celebrity here too. I don't know if that's going to get worked out or not, but.
So both a little bit different, obviously with Nolan's, and then obviously Coach Jones as well. Just two very unique situations. Colonel Brooks is pretty standard in regards to the Armed Forces Day Parade. Absolutely.
Which is why they're under recognitions instead of each other.
Yep. Any other questions on recognitions?
One, Tiffany and I think have just both felt awkward.
Richie, you turn your mic.
Oh, we need to be on mics?
We don't have to be, but
Okay. I don't need this to be like public-y, but I think it's Tiffany and I that have talked after at different points that our recognitions feel clunky. Like, could we, and I don't know if that's something we decide here or your team, that I mean, we had that young woman who was like Miss All Basketball Amazingness, had won everything ever, and she didn't even get to say hello. And I think it's because she didn't know where to stand. And then we had like every member of another team come and stand right in front of us. And I mean, these are such special, important things. It feels like we should have a better protocol for how it all goes down. Like, I don't know if we have one of our banners up that they stand, that we know that, Kathy, were you in
I'm
on that
smiling
conversation?
about this because I've been
Maybe
saying
it was
this.
you and I. Maybe it was, I don't know. I just know
Yes,
one time
I'd
we were
like
like, what
to.
happened?
Yes, we need to improve it.
Yeah.
We need to do something about it.
I'm open to all suggestions, obviously making things unclunky.
Unclunky. We've got to unclunk. Somehow we've got to
But
unclunk.
I do
word.
agree. I'll tell you something just personally, it's been a little bit awkward. It's like having them come up to shake our hands, like I almost rather shake their, you know what I mean? Like they're getting the recognition.
Right.
And they kind of come around, but it's hard to,
walk up to the mic and shake their hand.
it's hard to
and then how
navigate.
sometimes the students will stand behind the microphone, but then other times they'll come and stand in front. And it makes sense for them to come stand in front, maybe. I mean, I don't need to be the one to dabble in and tell you which way to do it, but some of our event organizers in the system have come up with great plans, so.
We'll put that on the list to think about.
Under unclunkiness.
But I do
right.
agree. I think it would be nice to have the HCDE backdrop in here so that when we are recognizing somebody, there can be that photo op to take that picture.
Yeah, I like that.
'Cause
And
I
that
think
they
that-
know you're going to
Yeah,
be recognized,
yeah.
we're going to take your picture.
Because it's important.
You're
And
gonna
I think
stand with-
I think that example of that East Hamilton basketball player is a prime example.
So maybe what we could do is, I'm trying to think through where, but if we let this up before the meeting started, and we could have the banner over here, and then right after the recognitions, we could, yep.
And I also, when people send me, I always try to ask them to be sure that their student or whoever the person being recognized is goes by and shakes hands with all the board members. We're a little bit limited on space.
Right, yeah.
You talk about clunky, all of you trying to get up and walk up here and shake their hand.
Oh, I hear you, yeah.
It'd be worse. So I think them coming around shaking your hand, I think I don't know that there's a better way to do that. But I know what you're talking about as far as handing them the certificates and that sort of thing. It does get kind of jumbled, and we do need to look at that and see. Because, I mean, that's just something new that, we weren't doing before, and so we never had that issue. They were just recognized, they came and shook hands and all that. But,
So,
yeah.
so the people that come and talk sometimes are sort of nervous, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And so that probably makes it a little more difficult for them to know, here's how we do it. Would it be awful to get the microphone beside the banner? Would there be a tech issue that they maybe could stand in front of the banner and talk into the mic and then,
We don't have another microphone.
okay, and that one can't come off or anything?
Well, I mean, it's large. Yeah, we can, but whoever is working with them, talking with them, whatever.
That then, like, if they stand over there the whole time, that might solve a little bit of the flow, maybe.
The media folks have portable mics. Maybe they'd loan us one of theirs.
This might be something that innovation and outreach team
Please,
come up with an idea.
Bo, please, I was gonna point it towards someone.
Thank you.
We will make this look much better.
Some party planner.
As a side, I have, I'll share as a side, I've in advance taken on the planning of my son's 9th birthday next year, just because I told my wife I can do better, and so it was really good. But okay, back on track here. Field trips. So you see CSLA, 48 students that are enrolled in 8th grade will travel to DC. Any questions on field trips? And there's also Ottawa, which is comprised of obviously North River and Harrison Bay, but only Harrison Bay, Ottawa has soccer and volleyball going. Any questions on those 3 trips? I will say as a side, this doesn't necessarily come out of our field trips, but just something we've been very watchful on internally, not as much specifically today, but in particular last week and going to the rest of the summer, just as a note, and Ken may have some follow-up even to this, but it's not field trip related, but it is athletic related, and it has to do with the heat index. We've really been working with, obviously we have trainers that are on the ground there, but really the heat index, and the field trips prompted it, but I want the board to note that we've been very, very on the ball in regards to making sure that coaches are aware of what the expectations are and athletic directors are aware of what the expectations are. I believe it was this year there was a student in Georgia who passed away because of the heat, and so that's one of those things that you can miss in the operation, but it's something that we are really working to pay attention to. Bids and contracts are the next area that I have or see. We can go down through them, or any specific ones that you have questions about, we can work through answering.
I've got a question on the insights to behavior bid. So who traditionally has tracked, or how have we tracked the information that service looks to provide for us? Let me go out and pull it.
We have not traditionally tracked at this level, and I may get Nakia to chime in here just a bit, but basically Easy IEP has some functionality in regards to documentation, which is a statewide IEP module that exists, has some capability of kind of the FBA component. What this actually does is it provides research-based suggestions for teachers in regards to behavior X is showing up. Here goes some ideas or some things that they're able to do. So it's a much more comprehensive, really more like an individualized plan that deals with behavior for students and is a part of, obviously, as we work through disproportionality and just behavior in general, one of the areas in which we want to address. So it's not a service per se at this depth that the district has traditionally had. Or anything to add to that?
That's exactly right. The IEP software that we have speaks specifically to those children who have been identified with specific learning disabilities or emotional needs. What Easy IEP doesn't do is that when you have both, and in our case, we have both students who have IEPs and students who do not have IEPs who end up needing behavior plans. And one of the things that we, Garfield Adams and his team, which it was Garfield who brought this tool to the district, had noticed is that, were we tracking and monitoring behavior plans, in which in reality they had generally been informal, meaning that we didn't have them written up and everybody being able to access them. And then B, what are the actions that are being defined? And this particular tool has a research base that clinical psychologists have contributed to, where for every type of behavior identified and the needs assessment where it defines the context that the child's behavior is occurring in, what are the types of attributes for that student that we're seeing. It then gives the behavior specialist a list of potential strategies to use with that child that have a research base. And so once those strategies are selected and the behavior plan is put in place, it creates a repository for that other people can access, and we can actually track and monitor, are these strategies working with this student, and then be able to respond based on the behavior is getting better or it's not getting better. And we need to move to another level and try a different strategy. So this behavior management software will allow us to work with both students who have IEPs and students who do not have IEPs, and to have, most importantly, the knowledge base of all of the different research-based strategies to try to intervene around these behaviors.
And What are the CCEIS mandatory funds?
So that is when we've been referring to the set aside. So when we first started talking about the budget, I think we noted that the significant disproportionality finding resulted in the state requiring that we set aside 15% of our IDEA funds to address this issue. So in doing so, when you've heard in the latest budget proposal around 42 educational assistant positions that have to come into the general fund budget, that's because we were using that 15%, which is 1.4 million, out of IDEA to pay for those educational assistants. Well, now, because we had the significant disproportionality finding, the state is requiring that those $1.4 million go towards addressing the issue. That CCEA, and I can give you exactly what the criteria is. They just want what they're distinguishing those dollars from our regular IDEA line items. And so it is, and Garfield just gave me this. I'll read it for you because I don't remember.
It's the last sentence in the paragraph there of the memo. Right before the fund.
It stands for comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. So that carve out, they are putting under a different program heading to make sure they can track and monitor how we spent the 1.4 million towards addressing our significant disproportionality findings. So it's the comprehensive coordinated early intervening services set aside.
Okay. Well, I just thank you for clarifying, because when I read the sentence, it said allows for the district to track percentage of discipline and behaviors happening across the district. And I know, I mean, if we've been flagged, for disproportionality, then there obviously has been a method of school.
Right. Absolutely, that's empowered.
Right.
You're
so all that
right.
was showing was
Just the
consequences,
right.
or yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Are there any other questions in regards to bids and contracts or anything you want to hit?
I may have one more. Hang on.
Typo on that's going to be corrected
Please,
before
yes,
Thursday
thank you.
night. So on it's 1D. It's a request for textbook purchase for social studies and chemistry. There's a typo in the second paragraph that gives the dollar amount, so we'll get that corrected. The dollar amount for the total purchase should be $1,425,728. So I apologize if that happened for this meeting. We'll get it corrected before Thursday. Request will be the same. It's just the dollar amount didn't add up correctly. The totals, if you look at the totals for the cost of the books, individually they're correct. In the memo, the number that's added up is incorrect.
I imagine Mr. Goldberg caught that.
No, sir, I did. Thank you.
Math, right?
Yes. Statistics I had to take.
I caught it. I was just waiting to see it.
I bet you did.
Having a little, talk about clunkiness, this new tool, is there a way, Sherry, for us to download the files themselves? Because like for this one we're looking at right now, it's a 14-page PDF, but I can't just scroll through and read the whole PDF. I have to go to the next page and the next page. Can I get the entire document? Is there a way I can do that?
I'll check and see.
Okay.
It's still new to me too, so I'll
Under
check.
contract is number 2.
Yeah.
It's the second to last contract.
I think you're supposed to
Right
be.
before
able to
fuel
download.
purchase.
Yeah, I think that green, I'm looking at it, there's a green arrow, yeah. If you click that little tiny green arrow, it lets you just download it to your,
Since to
You want a hard copy?
It took me about 6 months to learn that one.
Okay, great. Thank you
Got
for
it.
the tiny green button. So, it's so subtle.
Are we moving on from consent agenda? I did want to note.
We got one more
Okay,
thing.
One thing, okay.
If you guys will look at the contract for the emergency early approval there, the Educator Software Solutions, I think that's number 2 under bids and contracts. I was just going to ask Dr. Johnson to clarify that. I know obviously whenever we see emergency early approval, kind of rings some bells, so.
Yeah. So every year we have T-Eval, and that is the fee you see. I believe it's $32,000 is the, and I'm going to let Keith have some more specifics around it, is the regular renewal fee that exists. And so there was some challenge on their end with getting everything set up and squared away in time for the upcoming meeting and getting ready to step into 1920. We needed to get the system updated and uploaded. Actually, as I believe the very day I asked, requested Chairman Wingate to sign it, I looked at my inbox later that evening, and Keith said, I think we figured out a workaround to bring it as a regular item, but I said, it's already done. So, Keith, you want to add anything to that, what that software is and does? And
No, it's just our Project Coach evaluation system. It's for not only our teachers, our administrators, but we also added a component for classified employees this year. And what happened is we typically get this quote early in the month of June. We didn't get it until June 25th this year from T-Eval. So we're just trying to be sure we paid our bill on time.
And again, the number's not any different than
That's
most recently, previous years.
That number has been pretty consistent, even with the addition of the, when I say pretty, it has been consistent for several years. Even with the addition of the classified evaluations, they've kept the price the same.
Okay. So anybody had a question on that? I just want to make sure everybody was aware of that, because again, I know the sensitivity to early approval, but that's backstory on that. I think we're good with that.
Did you have something to key around consent?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we passed out the packet of policies for first read. And so we are going to add those first read as an amended agenda item. We will ask for that on Thursday. And this is just the discussion that we had that we got final. You all know that there were a couple of other items that we were asking Scott Bennett to help on. So none of those are included. So these are just the things that we were settled on. So it's 4 policies. The workplace violence policy 5.6001 was cleanup of some of the language for clarity. The time schedules and extra duties 5.602, this matches the language in the proposed MOU for collaborative conferencing. And essentially all it does is update and clarify that the workday is 7.5 hours per TCRS and the 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after. And again, this language was agreed upon with the collaborative conferencing team, and it's in the MOU as well. And there's also on the second page, the lunch periods clarification under classified employees. The staff and community relations policy 5.606, you see the red highlight. We just removed the references to specific social media sites because we probably can't keep up, and it is common language now to say social media. And then finally, the student teachers policy, which you all had a draft of. We've just now put it into the template for the policies. And so all of that language is there that clarifies from our human resources team, the student teacher and the consolidation of that process through the human resources team, et cetera. Same language that you all saw. So this will be first read. And again, as you know, we can make changes between first and second read if anything comes up, but we did want to get it on consent agenda for first read.
All right. You good? All right. The monthly financial report exists there. Questions about that? Then you see the budget amendments. Brent, anything to highlight on the budget amendments for this month.
The first one is a state grant, which is a state mandate that provides a case manager for transitioning what they call vocational rehab students from school to work. And then the second one is the Community Foundation grant that was approved by the board last month for the student success planning. And the third one is was also approved by the board last month. That is a donation from Benwood Foundation to set up the labs at the Howard Connect Middle School. So this is just providing budgets for all the things that were approved prior to this month by the board.
Those say Benwood Foundation on them. Neither of them says Community Foundation. Maybe I'm not clicking on the one I clicked on self-funded expense and self-funded source. So those go together?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the student success planning is that separate one down there. Okay. It's a tremendous gift from them.
All right. If it's okay with the board and okay with you, Chairman, I'd like to pull this. I won't pull this, but I'd like to go for the rest of the agenda, then come back last to school fees, because I think that's the one where there's probably the most opportunity for discussion around how the board would like to proceed with that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the MOU with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Project Search. It's the MOU to continue this program. It is a great program where students are put to work, particularly our special ed students, a great transition program. And this is the MOU to continue that partnership.
I wanted to ask is this a new program? Have we been doing this?
This is, I want to say this will be the third.
I think last year, so for this specific one, there have been other iterations of it, but the one where we had 4 out of 5.
This was 4 out of 5, which would be the second or third year of it. I know this year they did it last year in a different type of way, maybe. But there were 4 out of 5 students that were placed, and we'll get you some additional information and links on it. But it's a really neat program.
It was very impressive.
Just say it's been a great program. I've witnessed it.
Have you? I'd really liked it.
It's really a very positive.
Yeah.
I've known some of the kids who've been in it, and it's been super for our children.
I mean, Blue Cross Blue Shield does so much for Hamilton County students. It's amazing. I did not know this, so shame on me. That was awesome. I was really happy to read that.
Good.
Yeah.
Under item F, use and maintenance agreement of Smart Find Express. This is just a sub program, correct, Keith? It's just what we use internally for our sub program, and just a renewal of that. Anything to add? Keith, any questions on it?
Just this is out of pure curiosity, because it seems like since I've been on the board, we just kind of keep adding things to Power School as we go. What are we spending a year with Power School now? And is there, would it be better off for the district to go? And I don't know if it is, because I just pulled up their website to see how many different things they offer, and it's like 50,000 different things.
Yeah.
But I didn't know kind of what we're total in spending with them.
So I don't know what we're total spending in Power School. What's happened is Power School has bought a lot of the companies that we were dealing with in separate software systems. So they're bringing it all under one house, one corporation.
Yeah, they're our student information system, and then there's obviously this product that we use. They also have a new financial product that I don't know that we'll consider at all. It's called SunGuard, I believe. But there's a multitude of things they bought. They stepped into the LMS world, the learning management system, for students, and we opted not to go with Power School for that product.
They offered Benchmark. We opted not to use their Benchmark.
They had bought Haiku, was the initial thing. And then, yeah, the name, and then I think they stepped away from them. This is just trying to dust off the cobwebs, and they end up purchasing somebody different. But yeah, they cast their net really, really broad and make it tough on systems because most school districts in the state operate Power School. And so you have to have that SIS, and it's one of the more fluid and talk. I don't know, Brent, you had anything to add in regards to Power School?
I was just going to say we are going to be evaluating some of the modules we have, especially finance, human resources, those types of modules. While we're in the process of doing that, we will see what other student information systems exist, especially when they integrate. But that'll all be part of the evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, it was nothing against Power School. I was just wondering, we keep adding here and there different things, and I was just kind of wanting to see where we're standing total with them.
From an evaluation standpoint, though, we do want to look at cost and see if we can get something better for less money, we will do that. Always, every day.
Have we always used?
We've had it for a while. Yeah. How long? Yeah.
I think we had it, Power School since 2010, 9 maybe. And it was,
Cyrus before that. Osiris.
Sassy.
Yeah. I know there's another product called, what is it, Skyward? There's several different, there's several different products. It's complex to integrate your SIS system and to make a shift because you've got counselors, you've got bookkeeper. I mean, everybody touches your student information system. So, obviously, we don't want to turn away any savings on it, but they also know they've got a market, and when they get you, it's hard to pivot because it's much tougher. And I'm just being very frank; it's much tougher to be nimble with your SIS because of all of the inputs and outputs and our funding. You know, when we start talking about ADM and pulling that for state level funding, Brian C goes to Power School, and we pull that information down. So it's just a lot of complexity to it. That exists, but absolutely, you're exactly right in that Power School has acquired half of the world. Administrative Matters, Chief Operations Officer, American Logistics, contract continuation, and the Howard easement. Ken, you got anything on those you want to add inside of what's there?
We engaged in that contract about 5 years ago. We happen to notice that the contract expires in December, right in the middle of our school year. So we're just asking that we continue the contract until the end of the school year, and then we'll have to rebid at that particular time. We just didn't want it to end during the school year. And 5 years ago, we just didn't notice that.
Can you tell me, what is that? I looked at it and
Yes, they are used from time to time to transport our very fragile students, foster students, some of the hard to reach students. So it's good to be a little flexible to have that service available.
do you know if there's other services out there that would transport them? Do we have other options to look at when it's time to?
Yes, we'll rebid and open it up to anybody who's interested. But we just noticed it ended in December, so we need to extend it to June.
Do we know if First Students, do they have that service?
We're going to check.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
The original contract was for 5 years, correct? Yes, and so this isn't it is a continuation, but not a whole year. Okay.
That's correct, just to get us to the end to June.
Dr. Bradshaw, Dr. Bradshaw, I think that's wise. We don't need, those children are so fragile.
Yes.
They do not need to change systems in the middle of a year. Even if it's a good, positive system, it needs to continue throughout the whole year. I agree with you wholeheartedly, sir.
Yes, sir.
And anything on the as far as the easement, excuse me, the board's already approved this. These are just the closing documents for that from the approval from the March board meeting. I guess the last item that I really had, and then I'm sure the chairman will discuss the 25th, were these fees, and I'll kind of defer to Brent to talk to, and then to talk about kind of where we are, and obviously I know there'll be more conversation about this on, excuse me, on Thursday. But Brent, you want to talk a little bit about where we are, and then some thoughts and ideas and options that exist.
So I know that I'll go back a little bit to last year when we formed a district improvement team to talk about school fees and trying to standardize those fees. That led to the proposal that was included in the original budget of almost 1.9 million to totally eliminate school fees other than the $20 art, science, and technology fee. And we also standardized the parking fee to $25 at every school. With the revised budget, we cut that proposed budget amount from 1.9 million down to 1 million. Because of that, we're going to have to revise the fees at some level. The original proposal was to have a $30 or $20 art, science, technology fee. Option A listed in this proposal for revised school fees is for a $30 art, science, and technology fee. I think that would, if we have the $1 million to allocate to schools, plus we can collect 30 from, or ask families, to pay the $30, and we keep the same collection rate that we've had historically for fees, then all of our schools would be whole compared to last year, and some schools would still gain. They won't gain like they would have with a pure allocation, but they will still gain funds compared to last year. So that's option A. Option B is zero money in the budget in lieu of school fees, and we standardize the school fees across grade bands with $45 for elementary, $55 for middle, and $65 for high school and combo schools. So the previous range of school fees was $0 to $140, depending on the school. So if there's no money in the budget proposal, then this would at least standardize the fees. It would also be, we would be asking for less money at several schools, so we would have to monitor that from central office to make sure that these schools do have enough funds to operate, and if they didn't, then we would have to intervene and provide more funds, especially like schools that normally ask for, say, $100 or $120. If they can only ask for $65, hopefully their collection rate would go up, but we don't know if it would be enough to make up for what they've used in the past. So essentially, those are the two options. Whether there's money in the budget or not would dictate which one that we would recommend. But either way, we think we need to change what was approved by the board in May, which was the $20 art, science, technology fee.
And just as a one recommendation, I thought we talked about this some this morning. Obviously on Thursday we have a work session, and this I would anticipate will be a part of that conversation at some level. If we had a meeting on the 25th, which it looks like it's there, I would recommend that we pull this item, that the board consider pulling this item until we got to that point, to at least have the conversation on Thursday, and the board have time to consider it, and then you bring it on the 25th when you vote on the other items. That gives the board more time to breathe and to have questions about it, and to answer questions, and for us to continue to have dialogue. The one thing I will say, just to put all out there so that there's some context to it, when he mentioned addressing schools that may be at a loss, we would have to just figure that out for this year. You're talking about essentially a one-year fix, which might mean that we need to recommend looking at fund balance or other options for the year to make sure schools had enough money. To be very frank, and I'm just going to say elephant in the room around these fees, one of the reasons the fees, I believe, just my myth, one of the reasons that I think your fees and system got so from 0 to 150 is because schools didn't have enough operational money at the building level to do the things they needed to do. So really the impetus behind appropriating the 1.8 was to give most schools more resources at the school level to be able to do what they need to do. I think we still need to figure out a way to give schools access to those resources, even if it means obviously we'd just be bringing a recommendation forth that we look at other ways of being able to address that. But again, I just want to make sure the board has time to consider all the options, to converse about it in work session, obviously on the 18th. So just a recommendation for consideration of pulling the item so that the board has time to consider a little more deeply.
Yeah. Dr. Johnson, I think we all understand the operational fees are really a challenge for many of the schools. Are we looking at helping some of the schools that are higher income have been charging $100, $150? And some of those, our Title I schools where the families are struggling, we obviously need to help them too. Are we looking at helping both ends, or just everyone, or a set amount for everyone? Or how are we? What's your general thoughts on that?
So what we tried to do with fees was to do the ADM, the average daily membership, and to try to standardize it. Obviously, we've tried to look at the economically disadvantaged levels in schools when we get into staffing and other appropriation of resources, but it's just much cleaner in dealing with the appropriation to look at the average daily membership and then to set up a quote unquote number, because the student in the seat dictates the resources to the building. Honestly, what you find is that on both ends, in particular, it works out pretty well on both ends. And so your economic disadvantaged, your schools with higher rates of economic disadvantaged students aren't collecting any fees anyway. And so now they're getting an ADM, or they're getting a true set number. Some of our schools like Hicks and Red Bank, some of those schools ended up seeing a bump because they were collecting, and I'm just going to throw a percentage out there, maybe 35%. Well, now, even if the 35% was at a higher rate, now I'm actually getting a set rate for all, and now I'm collecting 100% in theory, because we're sending those dollars to the school level. Where we had some schools where we're going to have to implement some stabilization funds. Remember, in the original proposal was primarily combo schools and a touch of our magnet schools who had higher collection rates and had higher fees and numbers. But what we're going to do was we'll stabilize those schools so they didn't feel a loss. And then obviously parents can still continue to donate to any cause that they saw fit within the school.
That was my next follow-up question. So parents at Lookout Valley or Hickson or anywhere could still make a general fund donation to those schools, and we have the appropriate paperwork that they could do that?
We do.
Just curious, would that be tax deductible for them?
Yeah, it would be sorry, Dr. Highlander, yes, it would be tax exempt under our IRS section 170. We're not 501c3, but we do have tax deductibility under the Internal Revenue Code as a government entity, as a subdivision of the state of Tennessee. All principals do, and we covered this in the principal meeting this summer, they do have a letter that I've sent them that we prepared that shows tax deductibility, and it's also a donation acknowledgement form all in one. So it's a one-page form that they can complete and give to a donor. Technically, any fees parents pay, they could get a tax deductible form for that because they're technically all donations.
I had heard that, and thank you for clarifying and letting us all be aware of it. That was my understanding. I want to be sure it was correct, but thank you.
I've for 3 years have said I wish the fees would go away, but I also heard what you said the other night, that you wanted to say before you pillowed your head. So where I sit, this chair anyway, is I'm going to really be dependent on our leader, your recommendation to us surrounding this issue. I don't want to put any pressure on you, Big Daddy, but that's where I'm at.
So now y'all officially know Big Daddy. I would really strongly recommend that we make, and Brent and I'll go back and have this conversation. I struggle on both ends, so obviously the number one for me is reading and literacy and making sure we get that right, because we have to get that right, because our achievement, when you look at our achievement historically over the last several years in the county, although growth has moved, the achievement hasn't moved at the rate that we really want that achievement to move. But I also know loud and clear that we haven't necessarily funded the schools at the school level at the level that we'd really like to. And so we'll continue to dig, and hopefully Thursday we will bring a recommendation for options for the board to consider around how we might chip away at both of those. So I'm literally looking at him without a plan, but we'll have one by Thursday.
Yeah, and we can work on that. One thing I would mention, even if we funded an allocation to schools, even if it was worst case scenario from fund balance, that would be a one-time thing that we could then adjust into the budget next year. The other thing to consider is that we will be able to reduce cost for schools by moving towards centralized copiers, reviewing our office supply contracts, our paper contracts. So that's another thing. It's not just, we don't have to rely on growth money next year if we were to do something this year with fund balance. We could also rely on cost savings. So you have a combination of the two that we could use to offset that in future years.
As I reflected on our conversation, was that last week? Our conversation last Thursday about the cut line and the reading interventionist, something that stood out to me as I thought about it more was the fact that if we were able to fund the reading interventionist at the full ideal number, that would be at every school, and every single elementary school would have that interventionist, correct? I mean, that was what was in the plan.
And so we need to scrub those numbers a little bit deeper. He was given off the cuff. So there's two different items within the budget. One had to deal with classified support. The classified support was like 1.15.
1.015.
1.015.
So just over $1 million.
Just over $1 million.
For 28 classified positions.
And then the certified was connected to future ready students, which was more like actually $2 million.
Great teachers and leaders.
Great teacher lead, I'm sorry.
That was that's 31 positions, and that was over $2 million.
Okay.
And so we need to have conversation, and literally I'm saying this, we'll come back to you all Thursday on this, about is there a way to marry the two in some kind of way where we do some type of mixture of classified and certified. We're going to try to think creatively over the next 72 hours to figure out, is there a way to address the reading instruction intervention, and is there also a way to resource our schools more deeply, because the two go hand in hand and it creates systemic issues. Because so as a principal, I put on my principal hat. As a principal, if my 10th grade RLA teachers were struggling or needed some time to plan for the upcoming unit, and they had just received the benchmark and they needed to adjust and do some individualized things for students, I needed to have those resources to pull them for a half day and to provide them with a sub for a half day, so that they actually, what I hear from our teachers a lot of times is, they want more money, they want more time, and they want more support in the classroom. And we could never find enough time. And when they get time, it's too late to adjust to be able to, they get time during the summer. And so how do we give them that time during the school year? And so you get that time by having the resources. You got to have the dollars to be able to provide the half-day subs. And so it's just a interconnected, interwoven issue. We try to fix literacy, but then we need to pull them in for a training. Well, you got to have the dollars to be able to put a sub in the classroom to put in there for the training. So it's tough to unbraid the whole resource conversation because it's all so tightly connected. But we will over the next 72 hours just try to see what can we do with $1 million or so, which we've had some of that conversation. But when we start to look at that number, they're just two different lines. So we'll do that and bring a recommendation. Also, like really consider how the resource and fees, and is there a stopgap that we can do this year as we go through.
I appreciate that, and I think the thing that stood out to me was that classified or certified, that it was every school. And the same thing with the thoughtfulness of this fee conversation, that we're talking about every single school, because you don't want the middle income school to be left behind and them not have that reading interventionist that they need. That's not fair to those students. So I appreciate the way that you all are really carefully taking that apart.
Did I read too much into it? Or are you saying that maybe a number of classified people could, rather than a traditional substitute, we could have some floating classified if we had a small number added? Did I read too much into what you were saying?
Yeah, maybe. So there's two different numbers. There's a number for classified staff, which is under accelerated student achievement, which was the 1.015 that Brent gave just now, and also gave last Thursday as he was thinking about reading instruction. Really, that number is attached to great teachers and leaders, and it's more like 2 million. And so what we need to do is to sit and have additional dialogue around, we have $1 million for reading instruction, and to really accelerate that work. How do we do that? And I think, when I think recurring costs, that's where I'd recommend the recurring dollars go, from the standpoint of what we commit to in GP. And then is there a way to stopgap the fees and the resources for students, for schools? So no, we wouldn't have necessarily floating, but it might be that we have to implement some kind of model where there's some level of shared responsibility for staffing across schools, specifically for literacy. And what we've experienced success with is pulling a group in, a cohort of teachers in, and giving them teachers or coaches, supports, whatever. They give them very intense training and pushing them out into the schools. And so we may have to, I'm just talking aloud, spitballing as we go, but we will have a recommendation around literacy and fees on Thursday.
Mr. Chairman, just a little caveat. Obviously, all of our teachers, staff all across the county are watching these discussions, and I got 2 calls last week from 2 teachers, and another teacher that I ran to at church yesterday. The 3 of them telling me the same thing. And basically what they said was, Joe, we'd rather not even have our 2.5% raise. Forget about that. We'd rather not have that. Hire us some help, some of these interventionists. So I just found that interesting. They're not interested in the raise. They want the help. So.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that. I just think I think it elevates the fact that the budget proposal was right. And it's been funny. I've heard the same thing. One specific teacher said, I'm excited about the rate. I'm as or more excited about having some special ed support in my class. And so I think it just puts an asterisk around the things that we had in the proposed budget that obviously, unfortunately, was not passed were the right things. And I think they were the right thing because we were trying to listen to teachers, and we were trying to listen to leaders, and we're listening to students, and obviously going off what we're seeing as we go in the building. So we have to continue to resource teachers in that way. I don't want to get into the raise versus the resources, but I think if we can figure out a way to do some semblance of both with our constraints being where they are. And I always say this, and I put this on record right now, this budget was simply about excellence. And it was simply about meeting the stretch goals in our strategic plan. Now, we don't stop striving for excellence or stop moving and working towards the goals in our strategic plan. But when you don't resource your school system to the level that it needs to be resourced in order to be excellent, you're going to have some level of stagnation. And so I think it's really a continued conversation that we have to have and the board has to have around what's next for our school district. So
I think it's also just a testimony to the kind of teachers, the kind of people we have, not just professionals, but the kind of people they are.
Also, just another added to about the strategic plan, about how that you have really stuck to it and that we have all kept that the focus of the budget, the focus of everything that we are doing in, with everything that we're doing. And I think it's hard to at times too, but you're keeping it at the focus, and I appreciate that so much. It's a driving force.
Okay, well, as far as the agenda there, I think that wraps us up unless somebody's got other. And then let's talk for just a minute here about the 25th. So if we look to have a special call on that day, as it stands now, we would be looking at a budget vote, proposed budget vote, proposed code of acceptable behavior vote, and then with a little more time to chew on the school fees situation, proposed school fee vote on those days. Any input on that?
We've got the MOU, second read for the MOU also.
You go ahead and contextualize a little bit. We've got to have additional conversation with the association based on the adjusted 5 to 2.5, and then we're still trying to do the lanes. And there was one other piece that
So
we were adjusting.
we had removed the 15-year cap for experience. So we're looking to schedule, so it typically would have gotten second read this board meeting, but with the changes, we will be meeting with the association. We're trying to set that up for later this week. And so we would think that we'll be in position to do the second read for the MOU on the 25th.
Okay.
Could I say one of my fellow board members is going to be struggling to get here, I know, not myself, but could we, instead of start at 4, could we make it 5 or 5:30 on the 25th?
Oh, yeah, I figured it was 5, yeah. Yeah, that
4,
was 5
sorry.
would be great, thank you. Yeah.
5 would be sufficient.
Or 5:30, I mean,
5:30 might be, might even be better as a special meeting.
You okay? You all?
Mr. Chairman, just a question. I'm okay with that date. I'm just thinking, that will anything that happens on the 23rd have any effect on what could happen on the 25th?
I don't think so. So what the 23rd will be, MGT will obviously present whatever findings they have at that point. And so you really got two separate things. You've got some operational, this is more operational and capital, so you really got two different things. So we'll see.
I mean,
It's critical that those two stay separate.
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously you got something rolling around in your head there.
Well, I guess I'm just still hoping against hope. I mean,
Well, and I hear what you're saying, but I think at some level, that's in my opinion, that's outside of what we're doing, you know. So, yeah.
Will we get an advance copy of that MGT presentation, or are we all getting it at the exact same minute?
Yeah, there's so many questions about MGT. I'll let Ken give a high-level update on MGT. I've tried to stay away from MGT. And so really, and I will do this lead in, initially we thought it'd be the end of July or early mid-August before we had something. And so it's really a challenge for them to get it put together. But Ken, you want to?
Yes, we've had dialogue just to make sure that what they're observing in the buildings are exactly what's going on. We don't expect to actually receive the full report until the 23rd. We have a media briefing the morning of. But to be honest, we wanted to keep this clean and all receive the information pretty much at the same time.
Let me ask for this for clarification, Kim, because I think we did discuss, based on other districts who've gotten their reports, I mean, they are huge, like, printed copies, like the full reports are like these kind of bigger than 11 by 17 kind of things. We had talked about, do they need to ship them directly to us ahead, because it doesn't seem like the kind of thing they can transport on a plane. So I think we need to have a discussion with them about, do they at least ship it the day before so that we can make sure we have it and not rely. And I think they're coming the day before, so if they can bring it with them, that's one thing.
They are coming the day before, but to what Dr. Johnson just alluded to, we did ask them to accelerate this. Typically, it would have taken another 2 to 3 weeks to really put it together, but they understand our timeline, so they're going to try to bring the entire proposal on the 23rd.
So the press is going to know about it before
a briefing, and a very, very high, and they recommended that so that during the meeting, there will not be misinterpretation, and a follow-up meeting, they'll just get a high-level overview, then they'll roll into the session, and then they won't have to meet with the press afterwards.
They know that this works well.
Yes, they recommended that as a strategy.
I recommend, it sort of bothers me that the board sees it after other people do. I kind of agree with Ms. Hill. I think the board.
And I don't think it's the report, it's a high-level overview of the process.
I don't think anyone should see any of it before this board does. That's just my opinion. May not be. Also, Dr. Johnson, my notes may have been correct. When we hired that MGT, I had in my notes that we had hoped to get it by the end of May, 1st of June. But I guess that I wrote it down in my notes. I may have written it down wrong.
You may have been somewhat correct. We asked for the demographer piece to be integrated, so that delayed the final report.
Okay, so that was before that came in.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm not angry. I just feel like since the board's the one that has to act on these things, that the board should be the first one to see it. But whatever. I'll work with the group.
One point I just emphasize is that MGT we know they're a third party. The other element is they'll be going out into several, they'll go to each learning community and do a meeting. What they present, like the board's not going to be asked to act on what they present in a week, 2 weeks, a month. I mean, they'll go through a process, iterative, and it's almost that deferring expertise element where we take their advisement from the standpoint of process, because the depth and breadth of this assessment is not one that I'm sure the county has been through. I don't know, I won't say ever, but has been through in some time.
Okay, Tucker?
Yeah, and this is not, I probably should have said this earlier and probably more for Thursday at the budget hearing. Found out something today that kind of struck a chord with me, probably just because I relate to them with our new teachers. I think we're hiring about 320 new teachers. Most of them my age. They don't get their first paycheck until August. And if I were them and they were going in and I was going in just trying to set up a classroom with nothing, but they don't get a stipend or anything like that before that. Personally, I don't know how a 23-year-old, 22-year-old, 24-year-old goes about that. And so, I don't know if that's something we can do or a one-time kind of thing. But if we're trying to retain great teachers and have a competitive advantage over other districts,
It's a great point of conflict. Keith, you want to talk to that, because we actually hit all on that.
So 2 or 3 things. First of all, we're working through donations to help them get set up for classroom. I'll just mention we did have one of the items that we had included in the budget was the stipends to cover the new teacher academy, which they could have transitioned. We also have some work going on right now with the Teachers Credit Union to be able to, so they can get maybe not, we actually didn't envision it for classroom setup. Actually in each of our new teacher academy, our new teacher orientations, the credit union sponsors lunch, and then they come in and are able to discuss options for, joining and, actually getting loans. So they actually have a low interest loan for, to get students. So that's kind of where we're at unless we make some other adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, I found that out today, and it was just those new teachers. I mean, that has to be as someone that, my job, I got a brand new Mac. I got, all this stuff and ready to go. First day, didn't have to buy anything out of pocket, but they're having to buy everything. And it just struck a chord with me, just kind of relatability.
We talked about it for a very long time. In fact, Brent and I and Keith, we went and met with David Silkowski at the credit union to see about, in my former system, just coming from a different place, they had it was essentially a cash advance. And so I vividly remember being a 20-something-year-old broke teacher and the pay cycle starting well after you begin, just like most jobs, it starts well after you begin. The thing about teaching, a lot of times you get hired in May and then you're ready to go gung-ho, but you're broke, and you don't. So you start teaching really in August. But I had to take advantage, personally speaking, of a $1,000, $2,000 cash advance, and then they took it out of your check over the course of several months, and so I did pay that debt. But we talked about all those options that exist. We actually talked about, I think Brent brought up, we talked about the ability to even be able to kickstart our payment a month early, but then we kind of killed that because of technical budgetary issues and not being able to start the fiscal year in a timely way. But just know that we elevated that conversation in the midst of conferencing, and I think we hit everything in it.
And I'll just say, our team walked away. We're not really satisfied with the outcomes we have, so it'll be something that we'll continue to pursue as we think about our plans for next year.
Good.
Okay, so
They can access CDP money after July too. The BDP.
all right, so input again around this on the 25th. I mean, I know I've got a time here that would prefer for it to be Jenny 5:30. Would that make it better for you? Is that anybody else got anything there in regards to time? Okay. So we'll look to vote on those possible things there on the 25th. And I want to read this here from Mrs. Moore from the mayor's office here. It just says, Hamilton County Purchasing and Finance Departments respectfully request if you would please refrain from parking in the parking spaces at the McDaniel building that are designated for Hamilton County Employee Clinic. Those spaces, there's additional parking available on the street as well as parking across the street at Orchard Knob Middle. So that's regarding the 23rd.
What time is that? Is that
9:30.
Right. Anything else?
So the meeting with the county commission, so who's running that meeting? Is MGT running that meeting? Okay, so they're facilitating it. It's going to be a big presentation. No decisions are even beginning to be, I mean, I could just see how people are going to want to jump in and say, let's do X, Y, Z, but it's a listening, learning time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen some reports from other school systems. Golly, I can't think of
Guilford County is
Guilford
that earlier this year.
Yeah, and so they'll I'm sure take us through all of that in a similar way to the district here. And I don't have any idea as far as time frame and how long it'll be, but I would imagine just looking at the report from Guilford County, it'll take, it's more than a 20-minute type of deal. But then what I do know, because we talked about it in the original, was that they will do a meeting in each learning community around what was presented in a pretty, now that's not going to stop. Megan will have written a wonderful story before then and everything else. But that won't, you know what I mean? But they will go back into the learning community and have the conversation and do the presentation. And then even at that point, it's not something, I mean, these are third-party experts that do nationwide work that are coming in saying with no attachment to any facility, nothing in the game. They're just coming saying, this is what you need to do to become more efficient and effective in regards to your building and operation. And they'll go lay their heads down somewhere else. So the board considers everything that's there, and obviously it's the final, up or down on anything that's done or not done. No decisions will be made that night, and I would anticipate it's going to be an iterative process that'll take some time.
Two real quick questions. Logistically, do we just need to get there real early and get a parking place, or are we going to have spaces?
Call Uber.
Pardon me? Call Uber to come out to Harrison and get me. Pardon me?
Says your board secretary, you better figure it out.
Okay. The second thing is, while you said up or down for us, it would be up or down for us to recommend to the county commission, correct?
Yeah. So yes, correct in that anything that anything that you recommend is going to goes to the county commission. So it'd be you all's recommendation going to the county commission, and the county commission approving, disapproving. I think the issue or whatever. 100%. The other thing about that, I mean, it's a bond issue. County commission builds buildings, and so it is one of those things where. We want both entities, I think, ideally would hear it firsthand on that day, as opposed to second or third hand. So the concerns are duly noted, and know that I think you all know from how we try to operate. We try to make sure that you know and get information firsthand before the public gets it. And I think that's my job as your superintendent, to make sure, as your employee, to make sure that you know that information. This is a little more unique in that it is a third party that's coming in. They do have history in delivering this type of information to communities, and I think understand some of the potential implications around delivery of it. And so we try to be sensitive to that, and also be sensitive to the timeline that we've put upon them. So.
I don't know the logistics behind this either, but it's not here. It's not the county commission. Any way we can get it live streamed?
Oh, we're going to do that.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Okay,
we're going to bring our team, Chad, to live stream. I think they have planned. We will circle back with Mayor Coppinger. I think I did hear him say that he was going to have his team live stream as well, so it'll probably be available on 2 platforms.
But could I at least ask that could we get a seat in the place? For those of us that don't
Sherry, what say you?
Can we request school board seating?
There is. I'm sure that they will have a place for the school board and the county commissioners.
Mayor Coppinger has indicated that at those work session meetings, typically the county commission is like in the front row tables. He has indicated that there will be places for the school board member, I think.
Traditionally, it's been that way. Commission in the front, we take the second tier. But
we paid for the study, y'all.
Yeah, no. And I was going to say, I don't know that it's what we had heard, and you all, we can weigh in on this on what you prefer. We had heard that he was going to sit people in pairs by their district, right? So it would take up 2 tables, but you would be sitting in pairs by your district.
That's fine. I just hope not to, the bad knee not to stand all that.
No.
I'm going to put this, Jill, will you add this to the innovation and choice along with the pictures we need to?
Sound like innovation and choice is turning into hospitality and tourism.
Hospitality and tourism. No.
I don't see anything else to that.
All right. I think we're adjourned.